Hey there, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be looking at what it takes to be good at primary school Japanese. So there's kind of a lot of things involved in primary school Japanese, but we're going to look at what are the kind of basics that you need to know and what do good students all know. So there are many things we need to know, but if we know all these things in the video, you're going to be doing pretty well in primary school Japanese. Now this is specifically for Australian primary school Japanese, but I doubt that there's much difference the world over. So if you find that your child is not doing as well in Japanese as you'd like, and you run through a lot of these things, you're probably going to find that they're weak in one or more of these areas. So if you work on these areas, you're probably going to see some big improvements. 今日は27日5月2019年 So this lesson sheet I've got up on the screen, this is just a Google Doc. The link, this bit.ly link, you can click on. It'll be in the YouTube description, so you just click on it and it'll take you to this Google Doc, and then you can refer to all these materials. I've actually got quite a few links in the Google Doc today, going to some flashcard websites, some other my videos as well. So I'd really recommend, if you're going to get full usage out of this lesson, to click on that one. Now, I'm a Japanese tutor. I do online lessons. I teach quite a lot of students over Google Hangouts and Skype. So if you're a parent who's got a child who's not doing so well, I'd be happy to run some lessons with your child. And I'm not going to guarantee it. I hate guaranteeing things, but I'm very certain that I can improve any child's Japanese, because the main problem with a lot of kids is that they don't know where to start. They don't know how to even get good at Japanese. They just think, if my teacher's not there, I'm not going to improve. But trust me, I'll help you as a parent learn some Japanese. Now, maybe that sounds scary to some people, but trust me, you can learn it as a parent, pretty straightforward. And then you can be basically a tutor to your child, because you may find it hard. How do I even teach my child if I don't understand what they're saying? But we can cover all the basics, and then you can help them out. All right, so I've got a bit of a roadmap here. We're going to look at some main areas. These are, in my opinion, the main things that you have to know if you want to do well in primary school Japanese. So the biggest thing, and this is the thing I really can't emphasize enough, is that we have to master hiragana. Now, hiragana is one of 3 scripts in Japanese. I've got a beginner playlist that I would really recommend you watch that explains this in a bit more detail. But this is the most fundamental script in Japanese, and it's the one that everyone starts with, including Japanese kids themselves. The other ones, katakana, and then eventually kanji. Even Japanese kids are not going to really be looking at these in any detail until they're, I would say, at least 6 years old, 7 years old. Probably 6. All right, so when I say master it, what do I mean? Well, it just means you have to be able to write and read it. Now, in primary school Japanese, they have a very limited vocabulary that they get tested on. So essentially, they only have to know a few words, but it's much easier just to teach people how to read and write hiragana, because then they can deal with any word at all. So it really means that if I said a word like kimono, all right, this is our, what's a kimono in English anyway? But can they write that in hiragana? So kimono, can they write those 3 hiragana? And then also, if that word is written down, can they read it and kind of pronounce it? So I'm going to go through some strategies how we get good at hiragana, but I'm going to say this is non-negotiable. All right. I mean, if you ever want to get any kind of ability in Japanese, so if you want to be able to speak to people or read things, of course, you need to be able to read and write hiragana. Unfortunately, this is not encouraged much, I would say, or definitely not encouraged enough in Japanese curriculum. And a lot of kids are actually encouraged to use what's called romaji. Okay, and romaji is just using English letters to represent hiragana sounds. You want to avoid this like the plague. I'm telling you, just never ever use romaji. It is terrible. Okay, it's something that you should be using with an absolute beginner for at most a week or 2 weeks. After they've done, when I say a week or 2 weeks, I'm saying, maybe you're doing 2 or 3 hours a week of Japanese. So I'm saying once you've done about 6 or so hours of Japanese, just remove romaji completely. It's so counterproductive. I can't emphasize that enough. Okay, next one is we have to know our numbers. So counting in Japanese is actually pretty straightforward, and you really just have to be able to count up to 100. But because the counting is so easy, once you can count to, let's just say when you can get to 20 or 21, you can keep counting all the way up to 99. There's a special word for 100, which is hyaku, but then you just keep continuing after that. You just say hyaku, ichi, hyaku, ni, and then you can keep going all the way up, okay? You just have to remember a few numbers like 100, 1,000, 10,000, and then you can keep going. So, but all apart from those kind of big numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that just, it's very, basically the numbers rotate around themselves. So it's very easy to learn how to count. And so kids have to be able to count. And again, a good test of this is you just kind of say, hey, how do you say 13? How do you say 54? How do you say 88? Okay, so they've got to be able to do that. And then they've got to be able to do the reverse. So if you write the number out in hiragana, so you write 58, and then they have to read it and tell you what that number is. So just basic counting is very important. All right. Now, obviously, if they're going to do well in primary school Japanese, they still have to know a whole bunch of words. These are limited, though. So greetings are the main one. So all the kind of greeting phrases, so good morning, hello, good evening, goodbye, all these. They have to do kind of a very rudimentary self-introduction. Now, this is not really all on them per se. Generally, the teacher is going to prompt them with some questions. So, for example, how old are you? And then the student will have to reply, I'm trying to think how old these kids will be, like 6歳です, 8, whatever. So they can just respond to a prompt. So they have to get used to picking out keywords, and they might be asked, お名前は何ですか? So what is your name? And then you just go, アシュレイです. Okay, so you've just got to be able to respond to certain prompts. That's all that's required in primary school Japanese. You don't have to get up there and do a speech or anything like that. So all those kind of greetings. And again, the teachers will generally provide a booklet of some description. And so the key is you have to learn every single word that's written in hiragana, really, in that booklet. All right, so the next one, this is a bit more detail. So we need to know the basics of counters, and within that, we really just need to know these types of counters, very basic ones. This is never really tested in any great detail. So as long as they understand the concept of counters, they'll be fine. And they need to know age, which is the one we just talked about in this above point. Fruit, all right, so how do we count certain types of fruit? And money, all right, obviously we're going to be using yen for this as well. I wouldn't say this last one is super important, but it's as far as basic counters go, it's definitely on the list. All right, they'll need to know a whole bunch of nouns. So at primary school level, you're not expected to have a lot of grammatical complexity in your sentences. So really, you're going to be staying away from doing what are called conjugations. So making the past form of a word, the negative form, the past negative, all that stuff. So that's why nouns tend to be the most popular, because you can just kind of go, this is a book, this is a tree, and you don't need to do much conjugations with that kind of stuff. Adjectives you very rarely use in Japanese to describe nouns with. You'll just use them by themselves. So you might go, you point at some food and go delicious. You point at some food and go expensive. All right, so you're not actually having to do the grammatical thing of joining it together with the noun. It's not that hard anyway, but you're not expected to do that generally. But yeah, the words for Japan, so Nihon, the names of all the fruits, your own name, and the word for name, I, me, this kind of stuff. And we'll see later some verbs as well. Now, some basic sentence structures. I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of this today, but really these kind of sentences are what you'll need to know. So how do you combine a noun and a verb? So we've got I eat apples, so like ringo o tabemasu. Okay, banana o tabemasu. I like dogs, so 犬が好きです. So you really want to do the I eat X, the I like X, and it's cloudy today. Well, this is just kind of similar to the nouns one we just looked at, but 今日は曇りです. All right, something like that. So these basic sentence structures. Like I said, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail with these today, but this is kind of building on the other ones. I mean, the reason I put it last is because you're not going to be able to ever teach kids basic sentence structures if they haven't already kind of mastered these first 5 points or so. So what's the strategy? What can you use to learn this? Well, like I said, we're going to start from hiragana. So there are so many videos on YouTube explaining how hiragana works, and I would recommend you watch them. Now, you really would want to watch these videos a few times. I can't really recommend any in particular. I've watched a few. They all seem pretty good. There's not much to hiragana, so just find one which works for you. There's a Japanese channel called JapanesePod101.com. They're quite good. They do some nice kind of interactive videos. But you really just want to learn all the sounds. I've got one on this channel. It's kind of one of my older videos, so it's not one of my best pieces of work, but it does describe it pretty well. But I'm going to redo it at some point. There are plenty of websites, okay? Lots of free websites that explain hiragana. Take Kim's Guide to Japanese.org, I think is what it's called. That's quite a good one. Heaps and heaps and heaps of apps. You can ask me for some recommendations on this. I've got an Android phone, so I tend to use one called Takoboto. That's got a website as well, so you don't need to use the app if you don't want. There's one called Obenkyo, and that's both Apple and Android. And there's many more. You'll be able to find a free one without ads, which is not installing spyware. You'll be able to find one. Just look for a nice one that's downloaded lots with a good rating, and you'll find a good one. So that's, you'll find an app which can do that. So then what's the actual process you should go through? Well, because there are, I should know, there's like 40-ish, 42, 46, I can't remember, ish hiragana. That's quite a lot, especially for a child to deal with. So you want to start off by learning mnemonics. And you want to explain the concept of mnemonics to children because, again, children, especially of a primary school age, they're going to do kind of whatever they're told to do. So it is good to give them a reason why you're doing certain things, because if they can understand the reasoning behind something, they're a lot more likely to get interested in something. So that's why you as the parent should really be taking the initiative and learning it, and then you can explain to them, when they ask a question, you can say, well, the reason we use these mnemonics is because our brains make it easier to associate some kind of story or some kind of funny thing with the hiragana rather than trying to rely on like a photographic memory or something. I don't have a photographic memory. Most people who learn Japanese don't have it, but you can easily learn many hiragana very quickly just by using some mnemonics. So again, your teacher should have provided you some kind of booklet with mnemonics in it. Otherwise, just Google hiragana mnemonics. Okay, you'll find lots of websites which will get them. Now, the mnemonics are different. I noticed that Americans kind of have different mnemonics, and the mnemonics I learned in school back in like the when I was in primary school, it was in the late 90s, are still the same as today. I mean, they work pretty well, so I guess why change them? But it's very personal, so you want to find mnemonics that work for you. But really, you just want to go through the booklet over and over again using those mnemonics. And a good mnemonic should both help you recognize the shape of the hiragana and associate it with something, and then the mnemonic should also contain within it the sound that you need to produce. Okay, so like we have a, and this is a for antenna. All right, so then the last a sound on the end of antenna, that's the a sound we want, antenna. And it also kind of looks like an antenna if you use your imagination. Sorry if you can hear some banging, by the way. They're building some bridge right outside my place, which never seems to get finished. But maybe they'll finish in the next week or so. Hopefully it doesn't come through. Anyway, all right, so we want to just kind of drill our mnemonics over and over again until we can kind of, you can show the hiragana to the child, and the child can go, that's the antenna, okay? And then that's kind of the first step. So once they're doing pretty well, you know, they're kind of going at above 50% answer rate with those, then you want to start getting them to write things out, all right? Now, I've always been of the opinion that Japanese is really a written language, okay? You know, just imagine the guys with paintbrushes, you know, doing their calligraphy. It's so important. And if you spend a lot of time on the computer and typing stuff and putting stuff in the computer like that, it makes it a bit hard, I think, to really progress with Japanese. You really want to get a pen and paper or a pencil if you were going to want to go really Japanese with it, and just practice writing them out. Get some, you know, you can Google hiragana tracing sheets or tracing paper, and they'll just have hiragana written down with dotted lines so you can draw over them. Really important to just kind of do that over and over and over again. And it's fun, okay? It's fun to kind of do draw these characters by hand, and that'll help the kids be a bit more engaged. All right, next one is creating our own flashcards, okay? Now this is one thing when I talk to my students about what is an effective method, a lot of them say that this is true, and this isn't just the same for Japanese, by the way, but the whole process of creating the flashcards forces you to engage with the material. So it's not some idle thing where you just kind of write on a flashcard, flip it over, write it, and then cut it out. You know, the fact that you have to get it all organized and do it, it really does focus your brain. So a lot of people say just the mere act of creating the flashcards has been very useful for them. Having said that, there are websites with flashcards on there. I've got a link to one down here. So you can just look online for kind of custom sets that people have made and use those if you wish. So I guess use flashcards a lot. Now finding time for this is something you just have to really look at your schedule and think, well, where can I find the time? One thing I used to do a lot for my flashcard time was I was on the bus a lot. Okay, this is when I was at uni in particular, so obviously I'm not learning hiragana at this point, I'm trying to learn new words, but I had a 45-minute bus trip to uni and a 45-minute bus trip back. So that's an hour and a half, I think it was about four days a week, where I would do my best to spend the whole hour and a half on the flashcards or something else, okay, some of that. Now, per week, that's obviously a lot of time, but then over a year, that's even more time. So, you know, you got to think you're gonna have to put time in to improve your Japanese. There's no way about it. You can't just sit on it and hope that it's going to happen. And so you want to get as much time consistently week per week. And so I found just making a promise to yourself, hey, when I've got free time, when I'm on the bus and train, I'm not going to sit playing on my phone. Maybe I won't read the book that I would like to read. I'm going to use flashcards, all right? Similar thing. I mean, I made this decision quite a few years ago, but whenever I have free time, so if I'm waiting for an appointment or whatever the case may be, I'm always going to prioritize flashcards. I'm not going to read news or go on social media or any of these things, okay? Just always dedicating it to Japanese. And, you know, maybe that seems a bit over the top, but my Japanese is really, really good because of habits like that. So if you want your child to be good at Japanese, try and encourage these habits and reward them for doing these habits. All right, the last kind of stage, and this is really where you want to get to with your hiragana, is that you want to be able to write Japanese words and read Japanese words. So once you've got the mnemonics down, and again, when you look at the flashcards without the mnemonics, you can guess what they are really, really well. Then you want to start kind of thinking of a word. So there are lots and lots of Japanese words you just forget that they're Japanese words. You know, just think of food. This is always a big one. And you can write any Japanese word that you can write in hiragana. So you just want to try and do that. The car brands, we got karate, okay, sushi. So just kind of go there. If you're struggling for ideas, just Google Japanese food. I'm sure you'll find something you can use. So that's going one way, all right? That's think of a word, writing it in hiragana. And then you want to approach it from the other end, which is you want to find Japanese writing. I mean, just go to Wikipedia, just go to an article in English and switch the language to Japanese. And then just when you see some hiragana, try and read it. Now, it's going to be a bit hard, but at least you want to practice doing that. Okay, so I've got some flashcards. This cram.com website seems quite good. I've not quite used it much, but it's free and enables you to make flashcard sets. And again, there's lots of other people with flashcard sets on there for you to use. All right, next bit is counting. So I've made a video on my channel pretty recently where I count. I just show you how to count. I mean, the title of the video is like counting to 1 trillion and above or something stupid like that. But you know, it's kind of true. You can use that video to count. I mean, way higher than you'll ever need to count in primary school Japanese. So there's a bit of a logic with the way counting works in Japanese. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then to say 11, you say the number 10, and then you say the number 1. So ichi is 1, and 10 is 10. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then 11, 12. Okay, so 10, 1, 10, 2. And then we get up to 19, which would be 19. And then to say 20, we say 2 and then 10. So 20. And then to say 21, we say 2, 10, and then 1. 21, 22. Okay? And you just follow that logic all the way up until you get to 99, which is 99. And then we have the word 100, which is 100. And then we just kind of restart from ichi again. So 101, 102, 103, 104. Okay, so that's it. You want them to be able to count. So watch that video, watch it quite a few times if it doesn't make sense. And then just test the child, right? Hold a number. I'm going, how much is this in Japanese? Go. You know, write down a number on some paper. How much is this? And get them to say it. Okay, so that's just really watch that video. The next part of counting is something called counters. Now, this is something which you really just have to have the most basic understanding of. You don't even have to know it that well. It's just when people use this concept, you've got to be able to understand it. Very simply, counters is Japanese way of dealing with more than one object. Well, one as well, but generally when you have more than one. And Japanese uses a counter to group certain types of items together. So, for example, when we're counting the age of something, we have an age counter. And it's this guy here, it's sai. Okay, so you say the basic premise of a counter is you say the number, and then you have the, I should do it for the right way for the camera, but you have the number first, and then you have the counter. So, for example, I'm 32. So first I would say the number, 32 for 32, and then it's followed by sai. Okay, because this is the age counter. So 32. So if I just go, if I just say, watashi wa 32 desu, it's not quite the same in English. You're not kind of saying I'm 32. You're saying I'm 32, and then like Japanese people, like it's obviously they won't think that you're literally 32, but that's kind of what you're saying. So you need to add the counter in there to add that little bit more of detail. So you want to know the counter for your age. I put it up before in the roadmap. Also for fruit, okay? So we say whatever the noun is, so ringo, apple, and then we say niko, okay? Because ni is number 2, and ko is our counter for round-ish objects, all right? So an apple falls into that category, and we say, you don't even have to say this verb, I don't think, but arimasu, I have 2 apples, all right? And then the last one I said was money, okay, which is actually pronounced en in Japanese. So 500, 500, en desu, so 500 yen. All right, so I've got a link here. This is Takim's website. I mentioned this before in the top parts. Again, this is like a full guide to counters. You really don't need this much detail at all, and you don't need to know all the counters he mentions in this either, but just kind of have a read through it and see if you can understand the concepts. Again, I've got more videos on this channel where I go through counters using Takim's lesson as a template and going through it. So again, I would watch that video to help you understand counters, but you don't need to know this in any depth, but I've noticed it tends to be one of the big parts of primary school Japanese, understanding counters. Okay, so the last part is learning about some basic sentence structure. Now this, I can't really go over this too quickly. There's a few basic sentence structures you have to be aware of, but fundamentally, I guess the point to realize about this is that you're going to need to kind of say, you know, this is a book, you know, I eat food. It's nice today. All right. You're just kind of doing very simplistic statements of fact generally. So you need to use some nouns, some adjectives, and some verbs. But like I mentioned in the roadmap part, none of those words are going to be conjugated. So they're not going to be the past form. You might come across the negative form a little bit, but generally they're just going to be what's going to be called the present affirmative. Okay, so I eat apples. Okay, this is just kind of happening in the future. It's not happening in the past. All these kind of things. So there's a kind of a lot involved in this because I mean I don't really agree with this, but I mean I'm not a primary school teacher, so I don't really care. But the way Japanese is taught in schools is not a very good way of language learning, okay? Because you're just kind of taught, hey, this is how you say this sentence in Japanese, and you know, memorize it, and then when I ask you to say it, repeat it back to me. And unfortunately, that doesn't breed any kind of understanding of how Japanese grammar works. And so you've maybe learned some words, but you've got no idea how to create your own sentences, right? You don't understand the grammar. So that's what I try and do on this channel. That's what my beginner playlist is for. So I've tried to make the videos kind of short and punchy. There's a few in the beginning you don't need to watch for the basic sentence structure, but I would still recommend you watch them. But particularly the one that starts with, and it's written down here, learn Japanese, addressing others, referring to yourself. If you kind of start with that one and then watch the next few in a row, that'll help you get an understanding of how Japanese sentences work. But really you're going to have to kind of watch those videos and then look at what material has your child been given by your teacher and kind of see how it slots in between the two. Not the easiest thing to kind of get across, but of course if you can do these basic sentence structures, you're basically speaking Japanese. So obviously it's a kind of a harder thing to do rather than everything else on this list. So again, I've got the link to my YouTube playlist here. Have a look at that and kind of go through it bit by bit. Okay, that's it from me. I hope this video was really helpful for you guys. Japanese can be a challenging subject for a child. I would really kind of focus on teaching yourself though how to learn these things, because you're going to find you're going to pick it up a lot quicker than your child will. All right, I know that children can pick up things very quickly, and sure, they probably will remember the words better than you, and they might pick up hiragana quicker than you, but you're going to have a massive advantage in the fact that you're going to understand the logic of learning a lot better than children, because children don't really have this experience. They've never had to teach themselves something and then the techniques to do that and then recall it later. I mean, this is something I didn't even really learn until I was in uni. I'm going to be honest. I definitely wasn't doing it in high school. And so you have to learn how to learn. And for most kids, especially primary school age kids, it's just not something they've done yet. So you've got to be there as the mentor and guide them through, and they will do really, really well. I mean, but it's important to focus on teaching kids how to learn. So you want to do little chunks at a time. You want to do constant revision and constant testing. And you want to be always trying to check their knowledge, because otherwise you're going to find that you're just going to be spinning your wheels, all right? You're going to teach them something and then they're going to forget it. So you want to try and revise. I mean, ideally you want to revise every day, because children are not so great at learning and retaining information. They're going to forget it really, really quickly. So you've got to revise it a lot with them, and then try and instill those ideas of how to learn something and put it in their brain that way. Anyway, if you have any questions or queries, my email is right here on the screen. Otherwise, leave a YouTube comment. Let me know if this helps or not, because I'm trying to do something a little bit different here and make some different content. So I'd like to know what you guys think about it. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
I'ma wreck it like I'm revving the engine. Heaven's ascension, every dimension. Give me attention. Look at my soul, look at my heart, look at my hope. Got the world on my back, but I carry it though. Tell them God got my hand, I ain't